Welcome back, my fellow degenerates, to the Breakaway podcast, where we blend science, insight, and real-world applications to help you navigate the challenges of endurance, fitness, and beyond. Today, we're shifting gears a bit to dive into a topic that's relevant to so many people during this holiday season, especially young adults: the science behind drinking motives and their consequences. Let's face it, alcohol is a big part of social life, especially for young adults. But what drives us to drink, and how do those reasons shape our experiences? That's what this episode is all about. We'll explore findings from a fascinating study published in the journal Alcoholism, Clinical and Experimental Research, which digs deep into why people drink on certain days and how those motives connect to drinking intensity, whether moderate, binge, or high intensity, and the consequences that follow. But this episode isn't just about the risks or the numbers. It's about understanding patterns, why we make certain choices on certain days, how those choices impact us, and what we can do about it. Whether you're someone who enjoys the occasional drink, works in public health, or wants to support a loved one, hopefully this episode will offer practical insights and strategies for navigating the complex relationship between motives and behavior. By the end, you'll have a deeper understanding of how motives like drinking to have fun or drinking to cope can influence outcomes, and why it's so important to address these factors in real time. So, raise a glass, or don't, and let's get into it. To set the stage, let's start with some broader context about alcohol consumption. Globally, alcohol misuse is the leading cause of preventable deaths and injuries. From car accidents and health problems to its impact on relationships and mental well-being, the consequences are significant. But not all drinking is the same, and this study sheds light on the nuanced ways people engage with alcohol and the risks associated with it. In the US, binge drinking is a common behavior, especially among young adults. It's defined as consuming 4 or more drinks for women and 5 or more drinks for men in a single session. High-intensity drinking goes even further, doubling the binge threshold, with 8+ drinks for women and 10+ drinks for men. These behaviors are most prevalent in young adulthood, a time when many are exploring newfound independence, social circles, and life pressures. But what drives these behaviors? The research zeroes in on drinking motives, those underlying reasons that influence when, why, and how much people drink. The motives fall into 3 main categories: enhancement motives, drinking to feel good, have fun, or enjoy the buzz; social motives, drinking to make gatherings more enjoyable or to connect with others; and coping motives, drinking to manage stress, deal with negative emotions, or escape problems. These motives matter because they don't just explain why someone drinks, they also predict the intensity of drinking and the likelihood of positive or negative outcomes. For example, drinking for enhancement might lead to a more social enjoyment, but also a higher risk of overconsumption. Drinking to cope, on the other hand, is consistently linked to negative consequences like regret, hangovers, or risky behaviors. This study took a close look at young adults, people who are 1 year out of high school and at a pivotal stage in their lives. The participants included both full-time college students and non-college young adults, which provided a broader perspective on how drinking motives and patterns differ across environments. The research also addressed 3 big questions. Do motives vary from day to day, and how do they affect drinking intensity? For instance, people who are more likely to drink heavily on days when they're stressed or looking to have fun. How do drinking motives and intensity relate to consequences? Does high-intensity drinking always lead to more negative outcomes, or can it sometimes result in positive experiences? And do these patterns differ based on college attendance or gender? College environments often foster a culture of drinking, but how do these patterns hold up for young adults outside of that context? The findings revealed that motives are deeply tied to the intensity and consequences of drinking. On days when people drank for enhancement or social reasons, they were more likely to binge or drink at high intensity. But here's the catch: high-intensity drinking rarely leads to more positive outcomes. Instead, it came with more negative consequences, like injuries, memory loss, or regretful decisions. Understanding these patterns isn't just academic, it's practical. It provides a roadmap for designing interventions that address the root causes of high-risk drinking. By focusing on the why behind someone's drinking on a particular day, we can create strategies that are more effective at reducing harm. So, as we dive deeper into the study, keep in mind the importance of context. Drinking isn't inherently bad, but the reasons behind it can significantly shape the outcomes. Let's explore how these insights can inform real-world solutions. Now we'll dive into the heart of the study, the key findings about drinking motives, drinking intensities, and their consequences. The researchers categorized drinking motives into three main types: enhancement, social, and coping, and examined how these motives influence behavior on specific days. Understanding these categories is essential because they help explain not just why people drink, but also how drinking patterns vary in intensity and outcomes. First, enhancement motives are all about drinking for pleasure. People drink because they enjoy the feeling of being intoxicated, want to have a little fun, or believe alcohol will amplify their positive mood. This study found that days when participants reported stronger enhancement motives were also the days they were most likely to binge or drink at high intensity levels. For example, let's imagine someone attending a Christmas party. If their primary goal is to have a great time and enjoy the buzz, they might drink more than usual. But here's the catch. While enhancement motives are associated with positive outcomes, like feeling relaxed or sociable, they're also linked to negative consequences when drinking intensity gets out of hand. Think of hangovers, risky behaviors, or simply drinking more than planned. What's fascinating is that enhancement motives seem to be a double-edged sword. On one hand, they drive social enjoyment. On the other, they increase the likelihood of high-intensity drinking, which often leads to more harm than good. Next, we have social motives. These are all about connection and interaction. People drink to make gatherings more enjoyable, to bond with friends, or to feel more confident in social settings. Social motives are particularly common among college students who often find themselves in environments where drinking is normalized. Think dorm parties, bars, or tailgating events. The study revealed that social motives were also strong predictors of binge and high-intensity drinking. For instance, on days when participants reported higher social motives, they were more likely to drink heavily. But here's an interesting nuance. For college students specifically, social motives were more strongly tied to high-intensity drinking than for non-college young adults. This suggests that the college environment amplifies the social pressures and opportunities for heavy drinking. While social motives can lead to positive outcomes, like feeling closer to friends or enjoying a party, they also come with risks. High-intensity drinking driven by social motives was linked to more negative outcomes, such as regrettable actions or strained relationships. For example, someone might drink heavily to fit in at a party, only to wake up regretting their decision the next day. Finally, coping motives stand out as the most concerning. These involve drinking to manage stress, deal with negative emotions, or escape problems. While less common than enhancement or social motives, coping motives are consistently linked with negative consequences. The study found that on days when participants reported higher coping motives, they experienced more severe negative outcomes, such as blackouts, hangovers, or emotional distress. Unlike enhancement or social motives, which might lead to some positive experiences, coping motives rarely, if ever, resulted in positive outcomes. Let's take a hypothetical example. Imagine someone who's had a stressful day at work or school. They decide to drink to take the edge off or forget about their problems. While this might provide temporary relief, it often leads to overconsumption and unintended consequences, like missing responsibilities the next day or saying things they might regret. Coping motives are a red flag because they often indicate deeper underlying issues like anxiety, depression, or chronic stress. Addressing these root causes is critical for reducing high-risk drinking behaviors. Now let's connect these motives to drinking intensity, whether moderate, binge, or high-intensity drinking. The study used a clear framework. Moderate drinking was defined as 1 to 4 drinks for women and 1 to 5 for men. Binge drinking involved 4 to 7 drinks for women and 5 to 9 for men in a session. And high-intensity drinking was anything above 8 drinks for women or 10 for men. Enhancement and social motives were strong predictors of both binge and high-intensity drinking. For instance, on days when participants' enhancement motives were higher than usual, they were 3 times more likely to binge and over 4 times more likely to engage in high-intensity drinking. Similarly, strong social motives doubled the likelihood of binge drinking and high-intensity drinking. Coping motives, while less tied to drinking intensity, were consistently associated with negative outcomes. This suggests that even moderate drinking motivated by coping can lead to harm. Now let's talk about consequences, both positive and negative. The study found that drinking intensity directly influenced the likelihood of experiencing consequences. Positive consequences include feeling relaxed, sociable, or in a better mood. These were more likely on days with moderate or binge drinking, but didn't increase significantly due to high intensity drinking. Negative consequences included hangovers, blackouts, injuries, or emotional distress. These spiked sharply with high intensity drinking. Interestingly, the study highlighted a diminishing returns effect. While binge drinking might result in both positive and negative outcomes, high intensity drinking rarely led to more positive consequences. Instead, it disproportionately increased the risk of harm. For example, participants who engaged in high intensity drinking were more likely to report blacking out, saying or doing something they regretted, or experiencing physical harm. Another key finding was the day-to-day variability in drinking motives and intensity. This variability underscores the importance of context. For example, on weekends or during social events, enhancement and social motives were more common, leading to higher rates of binge and high intensity drinking. On stressful days, coping motives became more prominent, even if the overall drinking intensity was lower. This day-to-day fluctuation highlights the need for interventions that address situational factors. By helping individuals recognize their motives in the moment, it may be possible to reduce high-risk drinking. Interestingly, the study also explored differences between college and non-college young adults. College students were more likely to drink for social reasons, while non-college young adults showed similar rates of high-intensity drinking, but with fewer social motives. This suggests that interventions need to be tailored to the specific environments and challenges that each group faces. There were a few gender differences in the study, which is notable. Historically, men have reported higher rates of heavy drinking, but these differences are diminishing. The findings suggest that both men and women are equally influenced by drinking motives and equally at risk for the consequences of high-intensity drinking. In summary, drinking motives, whether for enhancement, socializing, or coping, play a critical role in determining drinking intensities and outcomes. Understanding these motives is key to creating interventions that address the root cause of risky drinking behaviors. Let's move on to exploring how this knowledge can inform real-world strategies. So now let's explore one of the most fascinating aspects of this study, the daily variability in drinking motives and behaviors. While it's tempting to think of drinking habits as fixed or predictable, the research paints a much more dynamic picture. Drinking motives and intensity can vary significantly from day to day, influenced by personal, social, and environmental factors. One of the most striking findings from the study is just how much drinking behavior changes within individuals across days. For high-intensity drinking in particular, nearly all the variability occurred within the same person rather than between different people. In other words, even someone who typically drinks moderately might engage in binge or high-intensity drinking on specific days, depending on their motives or consequences. Why does this matter, though? It suggests that understanding someone's overall drinking habits isn't enough. We also need to consider what's happening on any given day that might push them towards heavier drinking. This insight is especially important for designing interventions. Rather than focusing solely on long-term habits, we can target the specific situations and motives that lead to high-risk drinking in real time. Another layer of variability comes from the days of the week. Unsurprisingly, weekends were associated with higher rates of binge and high-intensity drinking. These are the days when enhancement and social motives tend to spike. Think about it. Parties, gatherings, and the end of work or school week create the perfect storm for people to drink more heavily. On weekdays, the patterns shift. While enhancement and social motives are less prominent, coping motives can become more influential. For instance, someone might drink on a Wednesday night to deal with stress from work or school, or even if they typically drink less during the week. This highlights how the reasons behind drinking can change dramatically depending on the day of the individual's circumstances. Social settings are another major factor in influencing daily variability. The study found that on days when participants reported stronger social motives, they were significantly more likely to binge drink or engage in high-intensity drinking. This makes sense. Social events often create an environment where drinking is encouraged or even expected. However, the context of these social events matter. For college students, the pressure to drink heavily might come from peers, parties, or other campus traditions. For non-college young adults, social drinking might look different, such as going out with coworkers or meeting with friends at the bar. These differences highlight the importance of tailoring interventions to the specific and social environments people find themselves in. Another key driver of daily variability is emotional state. On days when participants felt more stressed, anxious, or overwhelmed, they were more likely to drink for coping reasons. Unlike enhancement or social motives, coping motives are less tied to drinking intensity but are strongly linked to negative consequences. Let's take an example. Imagine someone has had a tough day at work. They come home and decide to have a few drinks to take the edge off. While this might not lead to binge drinking, it increases the risk of other negative outcomes like emotional distress or regret. Over time, this pattern can become a vicious cycle, with drinking used as a short-term solution for long-term problems. While daily variability is common, the degree of variability can differ from person to person. Some people show relatively consistent drinking patterns, sticking to moderate consumption most of the time. Others have more pronounced up and downs, with certain days marked by heavy drinking. One factor influencing this variability is personality. People who are more impulsive or sensation-seeking may be more likely to engage in sporadic high-intensity drinking driven by enhancement motives. Conversely, individuals with higher levels of anxiety or stress may have more variability driven by coping motives. Another factor is lifestyle. For example, someone with a structured routine, like a full-time job or school schedule, might drink more consistently, while someone with a more flexible lifestyle might have greater variability depending on their social plans or emotional state. Context-specific factors also play a huge role in daily variability. These include social events, parties, celebrations, or gatherings can lead to heavier drinking, especially when enhancement and social motives are high. Stressful situations, deadlines, conflicts, or personal challenges can increase coping motives even on days when someone might not usually drink. In physical environment, the availability of alcohol, such as living near bars or liquor stores, can influence how much and how often people drink on certain days. So let's consider a scenario. Imagine someone who usually drinks moderately attends a wedding. On this particular day, their enhancement and social motives are high. They want to celebrate, have fun, and connect with others. As a result, they might drink more heavily than usual, even if it's out of character for them. This illustrates how context can override typical patterns. The daily variability in drinking motives and behaviors has major implications for interventions. Traditional approaches often focus on long-term behavior change, such as encouraging people to reduce their overall alcohol consumption. While this is important, the findings from this study suggest that we also need to address the short-term, situational factors that lead to heavy drinking. Real-time interventions are a promising solution. For example, apps or tools that help people track their drinking motives could provide immediate feedback, encouraging them to make healthier choices in the moment. Education campaigns could focus on helping people recognize the triggers for their drinking, whether it's stress, social pressures, or the desire to have fun. Social events could incorporate measures to reduce heavy drinking, such as offering non-alcoholic options or setting limits on alcohol availability. By addressing the specific motives and context behind drinking on any given day, we can create more effective strategies for reducing harm. Daily variability also highlights the importance of self-awareness. Understanding your own patterns, why you drink, when you drink, and how much can be a powerful tool for making healthier choices. For example, if you know that social events often lead to heavy drinking, you can plan ahead by setting limits or finding alternative ways to enjoy the occasion. Similarly, recognizing when you're drinking to cope can be an opportunity to address the underlying issues driving that behavior. Whether it's stress, anxiety, or something else, finding healthier coping mechanisms can reduce the risk of negative outcomes. In summary here, drinking behavior is anything but static. It changes from day to day, influenced by motives, emotions, social contexts, and more. By understanding these patterns, we can take a more targeted approach to reducing high-risk drinking and its consequences. Let's move on to explore practical applications of these findings in interventions and everyday life. Now that we've explored the dynamics of drinking motives and patterns, let's dive into how this knowledge can inform real-world interventions. What can we do to reduce risky drinking behaviors and their consequences, especially in a way that accounts for the day-to-day variability that we've discussed? This study offers a wealth of insights and can guide targeted and practical solutions. One of the most compelling implications of this research is the potential for real-time interventions. Since drinking motives and behaviors fluctuate daily, interventions that respond in real time can be more effective than static one-size-fits-all approaches. Imagine an app that tracks your mood, social plans, and stress levels throughout the day. Based on your inputs, it could predict whether you're at risk for binge or high-intensity drinking and offer tailored suggestions. For example, if your enhancement motives are high, the app might suggest enjoyable activities that don't involve alcohol, like going to a concert or playing a sport, maybe even going for a bike ride, if I may suggest. If your coping motives are high, it might recommend stress relief techniques like meditation, journaling, or just reaching out to a friend. These interventions could also integrate reminders or nudges during high-risk times, like weekends or after a particularly stressful day. The goal is to help individuals recognize their motives in the moment and make healthier choices. Interventions can also be tailored to the 3 primary drinking motives: enhancement, social, and coping. Let's break it down. Enhancement motives are all about seeking fun or excitement. Interventions here might focus on providing alternative ways to experience enjoyment. For example, organizing alcohol-free social events like outdoor adventures, movie nights, or gaming tournaments. Promoting hobbies or activities that offer natural dopamine boosts such as exercise, dance class, or creative projects. Social motives are driven by the desire to connect with others. To address this, interventions can focus on changing the social norms around drinking. For instance, encouraging the presence of non-alcoholic options at parties and gatherings. Training event organizers to create inclusive environments where alcohol isn't the main focus. Launching campaigns that normalize moderate drinking or abstinence in social settings. And coping motives are tied to managing stress or negative outcomes, which require a deeper approach. Effective strategies include offering counseling or support groups for people struggling with chronic stress, anxiety, or depression, teaching stress management techniques such as mindfulness or deep breathing exercises, providing access to mental health resources, especially for young adults who may not seek help on their own. By targeting the specific motives that drive drinking, these interventions can address the root causes of risky behavior rather than just the symptoms. Technology offers exciting opportunities for scaling up interventions. Beyond the apps we've discussed earlier, wearable devices and online platforms could play a big role in promoting healthier behaviors. For example, wearables like smartwatches could monitor physiological signs of stress or fatigue and suggest interventions before someone turns to alcohol. I've actually even done an entire podcast episode about wearables, so check that out if you're interested. And online communities could provide peer support, offering a safe space to share struggles and celebrate successes. Virtual reality could even simulate risky scenarios, helping individuals practice decision-making in a controlled environment. For college students, integrating these technologies into existing campus programs could make them more accessible and appealing. For non-college young adults, workplace and wellness programs or community organizations could serve as effective delivery channels. While the study found that daily variability in drinking motives is common across young adults, it also highlighted important differences based on college attendance and gender. Let's talk about how these interventions can be adapted to these groups. For college students, the focus should be on reshaping campus drinking culture. This might include peer-led initiatives that challenge the normalization of binge drinking, alcohol education programs that go beyond scare tactics to address real-life scenarios, policies that limit alcohol availability at campus events, and for non-college young adults, the challenges are different. Without the structure of campus environment, interventions need to reach people where they live and work. Community centers, online platforms, and workplace programs can all play a role in promoting healthier drinking behaviors. For men and women, while the study found few gender differences, interventions should still be mindful of unique pressures each group faces. For example, men might benefit from programs that address peer pressure and traditional notions of masculinity tied to heavy drinking. Women might benefit from support systems that address the intersection of drinking and emotional well-being. One of the most concerning findings from the study is the link between high-intensity drinking and negative consequences. Interventions specifically targeting high-intensity drinking are essential. These might include educating people about the diminishing returns of alcohol consumption, how high-intensity drinking doesn't lead to more positive outcomes but greatly increases the risk of harm, introducing drink pacing strategies such as alternating alcoholic beverages with water or setting a limit before the night begins, partnering with bars and venues to promote safer drinking practices like offering smaller drink sizes or limiting discounts on high alcohol content beverages. Coping motives are particularly dangerous because they signal deeper struggles. Addressing these require more than just surface level solutions. Building resilience and emotional awareness can help people develop healthier coping mechanisms. For example, mindfulness training can help individuals recognize and manage their emotions without relying on alcohol. Resilience workshops can teach skills like problem solving, self-reflection, and stress management. Therapeutic interventions such as cognitive behavior therapy can address the root causes of stress, anxiety, and depression. By equipping people with the tools to manage their emotions in healthier ways, we can reduce the reliance on alcohol as a coping mechanism. Finally, we can't ignore the broader policy implications. While individual level interventions are important, systemic changes are needed to create support environments for healthier behaviors. These might include regulating alcohol advertising to reduce the glamorization of binge and high-intensity drinking, increasing access to affordable mental health services for young adults, and implementing policies that make it easier to choose non-alcoholic options, such as requiring their availability at all licensed venues. Advocacy efforts can also play a role in shifting public perceptions. For example, campaigns that emphasize the value of moderation and self-awareness can help normalize healthier drinking behaviors. In summary, the findings from this article offer a roadmap for creating more effective interventions. By addressing the specific motives and contexts that drive drinking, we can move beyond the one-size-fits-all approaches and develop strategies that truly resonate with people's day-to-day experiences. So as we wrap up this episode, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned and how it all ties together. This study sheds light on the complex and deeply personal factors that drive drinking behavior, emphasizing that the reasons why people drink can be just as important as how much they drink. From enhancement and social motives to coping with stress, understanding these dynamics can help us approach alcohol consumption in a more thoughtful and proactive way. One of the most significant takeaways is that drinking motives, whether for fun, connection, or stress relief, shape not only how much someone drinks, but also the outcomes of their experience. Drinking for enhancement or social reasons might lead to positive feelings in the moment, but when it escalates to binge or high-intensity drinking, the risks often outweigh the rewards. On the other hand, drinking to cope with negative emotions is a warning sign that deeper issues may need attention. This perspective invites us to think about our own behaviors and those of the people around us. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself why you're reaching for that drink? Is it to celebrate, to unwind, or to avoid something uncomfortable? Taking a moment to reflect on these motives can be a powerful step towards healthier choices. Self-awareness is a recurring theme throughout this study. Recognizing your motives and understanding how they fluctuate day to day is a critical part of managing drinking behavior. For instance, if you notice that you're drinking more on stressful days, it might be a sign to explore healthier ways to cope with stress, like exercising, meditating, or talking to a friend. If social events tend to lead to binge drinking, setting boundaries like limiting your drinks or choosing not to drink at all can help you stay in control. Self-awareness also extends to recognizing patterns in others. If you see a friend or a loved one consistently drinking to cope with stress or emotions, it could be an opportunity to have a supportive conversation or encouraging them to seek help. Another key takeaway is the influence of social context on drinking behavior. Social motives are one of the strongest predictors of binge and high-intensity drinking, which means our environment and the people we surround ourselves with play a huge role in our decisions. This highlights the importance of fostering positive social norms around drinking. Here are some ways we can all contribute to healthier drinking culture. Normalize the idea of not drinking at social events. For example, having non-alcoholic options available and celebrating moderation can make it easier for people to opt out. Create spaces where alcohol isn't the main focus. Whether it's game nights, outdoor activities, or creative workshops, there are plenty of ways to connect without involving alcohol. Encourage open conversation about drinking motives and consequences. The more we talk about these issues, the less stigma there is around seeking help or making changes. Changing social norms, it takes time, but every small step counts. By being mindful of how we talk about and engage with alcohol, we can help create environments where people feel supported in making healthier choices. Coping motives stand out as one of the most concerning findings in this study. Drinking to manage stress or negative emotions is a temporary fix that often leads to longer-term problems. But what can we do about it? First, it's important to recognize that coping motives often signal underlying challenges like anxiety, depression, or chronic stress. Addressing these issues might require professional support, whether through counseling, therapy, or support groups. It's also worth exploring alternative coping strategies such as practicing mindfulness or meditation to manage stress, engaging in physical activities that boost mood like running, yoga, or cycling, and building a strong support network of friends, families, or mentors who can provide encouragement and perspective during tough times. For anyone listening who resonates with this, know that it is okay to seek help. There's no shame in acknowledging that you're struggling. It's a sign of strength and self-awareness. Moderation is another theme that emerged from this study. While alcohol can be a part of celebrations and social interactions, the risks increase dramatically with binge or high-intensity drinking. Finding a balance is key. For some, moderation might mean setting limits before heading to a social event. For others, it could mean taking breaks from drinking altogether, like participating in dry January or similar challenges. The point is to find what works for you and aligns with your goals, whether those are related to health, relationships, or personal growth. Moderation also means being kind to yourself if you slip up. Changing behavior is a process, and it's okay to have setbacks. What matters is staying committed to your long-term well-being. Before we close, let's think about how we can apply these insights to our lives and communities. Here are 3 simple steps you can take today. Reflect on your motives. The next time you consider drinking, ask yourself why. Be mindful of your motives can help you make more intentional choices. Support those around you. If you notice someone struggling with their drinking habits, approach them with empathy and understanding. Sometimes just being there for someone can make a big difference. Promote healthier environments. Whether it's in your friend group, workplace, or community, think about ways to reduce the emphasis on alcohol and create spaces where everyone feels included. Small changes can lead to big results, and we all have a role to play in fostering healthier attitudes towards drinking. This study offers a valuable lens for understanding the dynamics of drinking behavior. By focusing on the why behind drinking, we can move beyond the surface level judgments and address the deeper factors that influence our choices. Whether it's recognizing daily variability, tailoring interventions, or building self-awareness, the insights we've discussed today can help us make more informed and intentional decisions. Remember, the goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Every step towards understanding yourself and supporting those around you is a step in the right direction. And that is it for today's episode of the Breakaway Beat podcast. If this discussion resonated with you, I encourage you to share it with a friend or family member. Together, we can spark conversations that lead to healthier habits and stronger communities. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, stay curious, stay informed, and keep pushing towards your goals. Catch you next time.